300 votes.
Dave Whiby, Vice Chairman, Board of School Committee at Large.
Oh.
He needs to be replaced.
Yes.
This isn't about Dave Whiby.
Correct. His position needs to be replaced.
His position needs to be replaced. Okay, I want to ask you, Joe, whether it's a seasoned veteran like Rich Girard who gets nominated, or a bright young newcomer like Jimmy LaHoo or whoever, somebody is nominated, okay, and then it's up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to confirm, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what exactly is the criteria? Is he a friend? Is he a buddy? Is he a contributor? What?
Good point.
Hopefully that's not the criteria.
The tradition on the Aldermanic Board has always been, if somebody, all right, let's just say, well, Donna Soucy resigned when she won her Senate race.
Okay, yeah.
I think at the time it was probably Corvo, because he was Ward 6, nominated somebody in that ward.
Because she was Ward 6.
Because she was Ward 6. So the alderman from the ward nominates, and then the rest of us vote. And we can vote yes or no. But he brings in one name. And then and the person he brought in was 14-0. So that was not a problem. Right. And then they made a motion to not lay it over for 2 weeks so that the guy could go to the next meeting. Because usually when an appointment is made, then it lays over 2 weeks, and then you can find blah, blah, blah. Same situation happened with Mike Langton. He was nominated for school board. They laid that over, and then they voted for him, and he won. I think it was 9-5. But there was 2 weeks, and then Baines tried to make sure the guy didn't get on, and there was a big fight about it. But they didn't bring in another nominee. And then in the instance with Corvo, they did not bring in another nominee. And to the best of my knowledge, over the last 15 years of watching this, and there's been a few of these, I brought in a name, and the new rules that apply only to Levasseur and to Girard, because I brought in Girard for a lot of reasons, because he's an Alderman-At-Large, he's a Republican, he knows the budget, he would be a pain in the butt to the superintendent. He would ask a lot of questions that nobody else has the brains or the desire or the willpower to ask. He would probably be an ally of some of those guys on the board with the voices but never get anywhere. And he's got a stick-to-itiveness like nobody else. So I know people go, well, Jesus Christ, he says all kinds of crap about you every single week. I don't play the political stuff. I want this guy to get in there, and I want to be a groundhog. I want him digging through stuff. I want him going through the holes. I want him coming up, popping up. And, of course, I got a call from Jason Cody from who runs our MTPS. They said the school board ratings are so low, they're almost negative. They have to pay people to watch the school board meetings. If Girard was on here, ratings would go through the roof, because everybody want to know what the hell's going on. Plus, Gatzis needs an ally, and I think that they would be allied together, and he's very anti-Common Core, which I am, and all of the people that are in my group are. That guy would be on there for that seat. So anyway, they have now made a new rule, and I don't know where the rule was, but there was a meeting of somewhere along the lines, and they said now they're going to do a different way. They're going to put in their candidate for school board, and I would nominate, and then anybody on the floor, all other 13, 11, 12 aldermen, can bring in any name they want. So they've changed the rules because of one guy, and that's Rich Girard, which I don't think is fair. I think it should be an up or down vote. Bring them in 13 yays, or 5 yays and 7 nays, or whatever, and then that's it. And then I offered, because of the guy that I am, and because I'm an at-large alderman, and it's a very rare instance, there's 2 at-large aldermen, my compromise to Alderman O'Neill, and I called him and told him that I was making the first nomination. I hope he didn't have a problem with it, because it was a Republican. The city voted for a Republican alderman. They voted for a guy who was known for doing budgets.
Okay, David Whiby
is a Republican. The city should be able to get the same guy, the same party in there. So I said, I'm making the first nomination, and then I said, if the nomination doesn't get through, as a compromise, this has never been done before, I made the offer to Alderman O'Neill, who I have a great deal of respect for. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on a lot of things, and we get along fine. 2 Manchester boys. We fight, but we get along. We get along, and sometimes we fight, just like any good marriage. And I said, Alderman, you get to make the next choice. If your guy gets in, or girl, or whatever doesn't get in, then I'll make the next one after that. And then we can keep going back and forth till one of us gets our person in, or the person we think can do the job. And I thought that's where it was going to lie, and I found out yesterday that they're going to bring, I mean, I don't know how many names could be brought in, but when Chris Stewart moves out of Ward 3, because he bought a house in Ward 1, he's closing in his property in May. When Pat Long brings in his nominee, I'm bringing in a nominee. And the nominee that I'm bringing in is going to be the cooler, smarter, greater, better candidate. Bet on it. I will find the one that no one will dare vote against, and I will bring it in because they've opened up a can of worms that they really shouldn't do, but that's the way they want to do it, and that's the way it is. Now, if Rich Girard, everybody's saying, if Rich Girard wants me to pull his name off the list, he can tell me that himself.
He wants in. Rich Girard wants in.
Because he knows he can go in there and do a good job.
Yeah,
and I know people go, well, you're nuts, Levasseur. I mean, he's said things about you that, whatever. Whatever.
That gives him crap.
We get it. We fight. Republicans fight.
Needs of the city come first.
Go bah, because they're a bunch of sheep and go running off the ledge like lemons. I'm just kidding, not everywhere, but it seems they stick to it really well. There's not a lot of outside battling going on. Republicans, that's why they never win anything. They battle the crap out of each other, and I think I want to make a point to the Republican Party that we need to learn to, forgive, forget, work together. Let's try to straighten the city out. And Rich Girard, I said last week that he showed something uncharacteristic. And I think it was because of his own downfall with Whiby. He did not take Whiby's face off. He did not rip him a new one. He was very, very calm and collected and cool. He didn't rip him a new one. And I thought that deserved a nomination right there for that reason.
By the board. So now you have an at-large seat, which would seem to indicate that the at-large alderman would be given the same option as the ward alderman. In this case, by the way, my understanding is that shortly after what happened to David Whiby became public, that Nancy Tessier approached Joyce Craig and said she was interested in the job, and Joyce Craig started making phone calls to various people to gain support for Nancy Tessier, who lives in her ward, as David Whiby lives in her ward. Apparently that led to something of a discussion between Alderman Craig and Joe Levasseur, who said, no, this belongs to the at-large alderman. Why are you looking to make a nomination? And so here's the thing. The at-large alderman, if you're going to follow the practice, should be given the ability to nominate a replacement. Now, officially, Manchester is a nonpartisan city. Not so unofficially, the politics pretty much still work along party lines. Both boards have one Democrat and one Republican as an at-large member. Levasseur's argument is that because David Whiby was a Republican, or is a Republican, that he, as the Republican Alderman-at-Large, should get the nomination. And so he's kind of tried to take possession of it as his own. And it makes sense. Some could argue that both Alderman-at-Large should come together and try to have one, and if they can't, then they'll put it in. Well, my question to the Democrats, frankly, is this. If Kathy Staub's seat on the school board, she's the other school board member at large, the one who, well, I won't go into it, but if Kathy Staub's seat were available, what would the Democrats, what would Dan O'Neill be saying about who gets to nominate her replacement? She's obviously a Democrat. Do you think Dan O'Neill would think that Joe Levasseur, a Republican Alderman-at-Large, would have any business appointing or nominating someone to fill the Democratic seat on the school board when the other one was a Republican? We all know the answer to that question. We really know the answer to that question. So why is it that the Democrats are throwing sand in Joe Levasseur's face over the nomination? Now, to be candid, a number of the aldermen that I've spoken to have told me that they didn't actually think Joe was serious about bringing my name in and thought it might be some kind of trick to do my reputation harm. I've actually had them tell me that. To which my response has been, if he brings it in, he brings it in. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I haven't told him no, and he said unless I did, he would bring the name in. If I get the votes, I get the votes. If I don't, I don't. I don't see any shame or embarrassment in coming up short on a vote. And there are some of the aldermen that I've spoken to who have committed to vote for me. There are others that committed to Nancy before my name even came forward. And then there are others who aren't sure what they're going to do. It's the way it is. But when you take a look at the politics, is it I don't believe it's an anti-Rich Girard thing, because I don't believe that the aldermen, some of them who made commitments before Levasseur even floated my name, were doing anything other than siding with who Danny O'Neill wanted to bring in, because she had, that being Tessier, had expressed a desire to serve. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with any of that. But let's put the shoe on the other foot. Okay, would the Democrats have, I can hear Danny O'Neill now saying, you know what, Joe Levasseur, you should have checked with me. I'm the chairman of the board. I'm a Democrat. Kathy Staub is a Democrat. It's, it's our seat to pick. You really mean to tell me that that isn't the case? That wouldn't have been the case? Maybe I'm wrong. Call me and tell me. I don't know. But you can make the argument based on past precedent, based how things work or would work if other people were in the position to do what Levasseur's in the position to do. Whatever you think of Joe, and listen, no one thinks that this is any stranger than I do, but I appreciate the fact that in this case he's been able to look past, the situation and not, be willing to nominate me because he thinks I'm qualified to do the job and I would be a good addition to the school board, probably because I know the issues, but more importantly, probably because I know the questions to ask and am willing to demand the proof and await the evidence and otherwise cause them to justify their wonderful recommendations and cut through some of that edu-speak and the other stuff. But I guess what the Board of Aldermen has got to decide is this. If they're happy with the direction of the school board, if they think that there are enough, if they think that the administration, see, one of the ironies of this is some of the aldermen who are willing to vote right now are some of the aldermen who have been very critical of the school board and the school administration for how they handle things and how they sometimes back the Board of Aldermen into a corner, etc., etc. And we've got Sandy on the line. Sandy, thank you for calling. Go ahead, Sandy.
Hi, Rich. How you doing?
Is this Sandy Paradise?
Excuse me, I have a cold.
Is this former Ward 8
I just want to say...
Sandy, are you Sandy Paradise?
Yes.
Okay. How are you, Sandy?
I've got a bad cold, a sinus infection. In fact, I just come back from the doctor's.
Oh.
Rich, I just want to say, when I ran as a school board member and they won 7 elections,
yep,
many Republicans voted for me. It was completely nonpartisan then. I could only go for a school board member. I couldn't even go for an alderman then because I worked for Manchester Housing Authority at the time.
Yep.
Okay, Nancy Tessier. Now, when her name was brought up as a superintendent, I favored her, and she got voted down 7-6.
Yep.
That was a long time ago, Rich.
I remember that.
I wholly believe, and I would ask the Democrats on the school board and the aldermen, whoever has to vote you in, to definitely take the opportunity and vote you in. You have children in your school. This is a different ball game than becoming a superintendent of school. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't know when I talked to Joe in his program for a couple of minutes. I didn't know, what was going on then. But that was way back. And I thought she would have made, 6 of us thought she would have made an excellent superintendent at that time. Right now, if I was on the board, I would vote for you, and I'm a Democrat, although I'm changing to independent. I would vote for you to definitely be on the school board.
Well, thank you.
You know what's going on. You're very, very diversified. You know what's going on, period, all around. And you've got to know that. Because Lorraine Lamontagne, myself, Mary Hussey, Art Beaudry, Catherine Lavenieres, we found that out. We did a lot of different things in the schools, and we had to stop some things that, as you were saying, just went on with that teacher in the 4th grade. If my children had come home and said something about like that, I would have gone to the principal myself. I would have had something put. I would have had a warning or something put in her documentation.
Yep.
That teacher, she has no right to do that. My children didn't speak like that at home, and my gosh, the homeschoolers and the kids that came from Christian or Catholic or private schools don't even know those words. In our church, they don't even know those words. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you'd make an excellent, excellent school board member there at large. So I'm all for you, and I hope my fellow Democrats will do something right this time, ask some questions, and I wish you good luck, Rich.
Well, Sandy,
and you take care.
Well, thank you. A good word from you will go a long way with many, and I'm truly honored to have you call in and share that. Thank you very much. So, well, that was a nice surprise. But then again, you know, I remember when Sandy was on the school board, and her and Sue DeRosier and the others that she mentioned, you know, back in the days where they used to ask questions that forced Rick Dumont in Ward 2, that forced superintendents to justify their proposals, to provide them the data, to make it understandable, to explain it, have the dialogue, put it on an agenda. And that's what I think needs to happen. And so if the school board, if the Board of Aldermen really honestly believes that there are enough people asking the right questions and getting the justifications, if they really believe that the school board is doing the very best they can with the resources that they're being given, if they really believe that enough questions are being asked and there's enough proof and enough evidence and enough enough results to justify continuing to going in the direction that things are going in, then I guess I'm not your candidate. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Good. Hi, Rich Girard. How are you?
Very well, thank
you. I just wanted to say I think you'd make a great school board member.
Well, thank you.
You know, you have been in the political arena for quite a while. You were with Zurich years ago, and you know, due to the unfortunate situation with David Whiby with the prostitution thing, you know, I think that, you know, I mean, unfortunately, you know, people do make mistakes, but someone has to hold that seat and hold themselves to a higher regard. So I think that you would do a great job on the school board, and actually, I think you'd make a good mayor if you decide to run for mayor. But other than that, you have a good evening, all right?
Well, thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. And so, but if the aldermen believe that an unstirred pot burns, if the aldermen believe that better questions can be asked, if they believe that better alternatives are out there, if they believe that something needs to be done to start to redirect the battleship. And I'm not trying to say there aren't good things going on in the schools. I think the STEAM program is fantastic. I think the Manchester School of Technology, which I proposed, by the way, it was a major piece of my campaign for mayor back in 2001. You know, I think that is fantastic. But I think there are a lot of things, and I think in a lot of ways the hen house is either being unguarded or it's being guarded by the fox, because we continue to see an administration that operates under the radar. For Steve, I'll get to you in just a second. I mean, if I were sitting on the Board of School Committee and someone came forward and said, oh yes, my former colleague, we have someone who's going to facilitate, I forget exactly what they called it, but it was back in December of 2013, going to facilitate teaching the teachers about the standards. You know why anybody knows who actually did that? It wasn't because a member of the school board asked who was going to do it and what their credentials, background, and experience were. It was me from a radio show who started making inquiries asking, who is this person, and discovering it was David Ryan's former boss in Nashua, the assistant superintendent, Dr. Althea Sheaf, who converted their district to Common Core. This was the person who was supposed to teach Manchester's volunteer teacher, Manchester Academic Standard writers, how to write standards. Steve, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Rich. Yeah, I think you should run for school board. I'd love to see you in there. I think you probably would be the brightest person there. I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
I was driving down Russell Street the other day. What the heck was happening with you? You were standing out in the middle of the road with your arms out. It looked like you were having a confrontation with some guy or something, like with a bus or something like that, your whole bus.
Yeah, well, one of my neighbors has a child who rides a special ed bus, And I've called STS on a number of occasions because the bus will sit out there in the front of the house and honk the horn until a parent comes to the door before they let the kid off the bus. So since I actually happened to be on the sidewalk when the bus pulled up and started honking, I went to the driver and asked the driver why he had to sit there and honk until the parent came to the door, why he couldn't just, because literally at the curb in front of the house, why he couldn't let the kid off. And then for some reason the father got all huffy over the fact that because of me calling and complaining, the school bus will only now honk once in front of his house instead of honking until he comes out to get them, which has taken as much as 10 minutes with the guy sitting there honking his horn for the entire time. So that's what happened, Steve.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because you had your arms out in the air. You look like you look like you're having a confrontation.
Yeah, for some reason the guy from across the street didn't understand why I had a problem with buses sitting in front of his house for 5 and 10 minutes and leaning on the horn until he came to the door to get his kid. And I frankly don't understand, since they literally are dropping him off at the curb in front of the house, why they have to wait for the parent to come out.
The parent should be out there if he knows the kid's coming there.
Well, I told the father he knows what time the kid's bus drops him off. He should probably be waiting there so they don't have to honk the horn.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyways, getting back to being on the school board, I think it would be a great thing for you to do, and I think it would be a great thing for Manchester. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the call, Steve.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. I cannot tell a lie. I wish I didn't have to tell the story, but that's the story. And frankly, those are the types of things that make a lot of Manchester's neighborhoods very difficult to live in, is the inconsideration of others and the impact that they have on their neighbors. But that's another story for another time. So I guess at this point I am campaigning for it a little bit. But if the Board of Aldermen thinks that better questions could be asked, better dialogue could be had, better ideas, thoughts, and solutions could be offered, if they think that parents could use some more representation, if they think taxpayers could deserve some better consideration, then I would ask them to vote for me. At this point, I am planning on having my name go forward and to see where things lie. Again, there's nothing against Nancy Tessier, but you know, my experience, which now spans a quarter of a century, tells me one thing. Like Alderman Ron Ludwig in Ward 2, who you know, I endorsed when he first ran, because having worked with him you know, as a mayor's aide when he was the director and assistant director of Parks and Rec, I thought he'd be a good alderman because I remember stuff that he was saying about various issues, and I endorsed Ron, and I learned a valuable lesson from that, because really, once you've been in the system, and I don't care if it's on the city side or the school side, the system becomes your friend, and you become an advocate for the system. And when you get into elected office, you have that point of view that comes with having the experience of being in the system. You are a creature of it. You're going to represent it. And the interest of the system and the interest of the parents and the interest of the kids are often different interests. I do have kids in the public school. I will probably soon have more kids in the public school. And I have an awful lot of experience, and by the way, I've twice been elected citywide. So it's not like I don't already have a constituency. But I would say this: if nominated, I will accept. If elected, I will serve. And I would ask the Board of Aldermen to consider, honestly, whether or not they think the board could use a constructive voice that knows what questions to ask, knows where the bodies are buried, knows how to bring it down to a level everyone can understand, and is willing to take the heat for trying to hold people accountable. I would ask them to support my nomination. And with that, folks, and by the way, I know the difference between being a radio talk show host and an alderman and a school board member, because I was an alderman. So don't expect me to be ginning up controversy that I can use on the radio, and don't expect me to be telling secrets on the radio that I can't tell from the school board. Just throwing it out there. But, folks, a lot of school issues. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. I appreciate the many calls of support, and maybe by the time all is said and done, I might have a different title. I might not. Either way, we'll carry on, and we'll keep our focus on the issues. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being there.